All right. We are calling to order the Wednesday, April 13th, 2022 meeting of the Gig Harbor Arts Commission. It is 10:03 a.m. and our first thing will be roll call, and I will call your name as I see you. And then you just need to say present or happy springtime or whatever you want to say to acknowledge your presence. So Charlie Glock Jackson, chair. Dan Bosich.
Here. Present.
Lynn Stevenson.
Here.
Linda Sutherland.
Here.
And Jennifer Beard.
Here.
And we are missing Robin Avni, who is excused. We also have with us Josh Stecker, city clerk, and Tiffany Alamant, new assistant city clerk, whom we welcome to our group. All right. Next order of business is approval of the minutes of our March 9th meeting, which, as you will recall, was a very exciting meeting, choosing our Creative Endeavor Grant recipients. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes of March 9th? Seeing none or hearing none, may I have a motion to approve?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve minutes from the March 9th Arts Commission meeting.
Okay.
And Dan is seconding. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We have I'm assuming, Linda, you're approving. So I'm going to say we have unanimous approval. All right, we have a very short agenda today, but if I may interject, looking at the minutes of the last meeting reminds me of something that I want to put on. I'd hope to put it on this agenda and I completely forgot what it was. But if we could next meeting, Josh, please talk about any changes, revisions we need to make to our Creative Endeavor Grant application form. Because we had some real questions that we had to debate and kind of arm wrestle about. And I think it behooves us and future applicants to clarify some of the issues that we had and had to resolve. So Josh or Tiffany, could we put that on our agenda for the next meeting?
Yeah, let's get that on there for the April meeting.
Thank you, Charlie, because that was something I wanted to add also.
Oh,
You can discuss that at this meeting if you want. Nobody's probably prepared for it, but you can always discuss it if you feel like it.
If anybody wants to discuss it now, let's go ahead. I just didn't want to spring something on everyone that might require or you might appreciate a little bit of opportunity to think about. So Jennifer, you have any comments that you want to make right offhand?
I am prepared to discuss it, but I also don't want to spring it on everybody if people aren't really prepared to go into that. So I do have a little bit of a list.
I'm sure you do. Dan, you have any thoughts that would you rather go ahead or wait until we all have a chance to think about it?
Either way.
I'd like to dive into it.
Okay. Linda,
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, good. Let's
okay.
go.
All right. Well, please, Jennifer, proceed.
Well, the first thing I have is it was a rather long meeting, which for us was fine, but our interviewees had to wait to be interviewed. And I think that perhaps if we could set an appointment time for them to show up, that'll help keep us accountable to the amount of time each person has. And also doesn't waste their time, which if they want to listen to the whole thing, they're more than welcome to, but certainly to have them waiting there kind of on hold.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also being very consistent with the time, how much time we spend with each applicant. I don't think it's really fair to dive deep into some and not so much into others, where we might spend 15 minutes on somebody and 5 on another. So I think capping that time is necessary. So that's my first point. My second point kind of has to relate to the questioning, maybe defining the scope a little more of the types of questions we ask during the interview process, because I think it's easy in our excitement about the projects to kind of start weighing in with personal opinions or recommendations in ways that might not be the best practices for dealing with city money. So like recommending businesses or something like that, people who can do a job. Like, I think basically, having our application really speak to all the questions that we might have and only clarifying something that might not be answered on an application. So if we feel like we're not getting the information we need on the application and it's leading to all these questions, then maybe we need to refine our application a little more. And then kind of my third point, which is no surprise, is clarifying between the expectations of an artist, an individual artist applying versus a nonprofit or an organization, and what those expectations are. Because I think that's what led to some of the confusion. So I don't know if that means, and I think it can be dealt with in multiple ways. It could be clarifying our process and our expectations on what sort of things we'll fund, or it could be separating the funding into two separate pools, one that goes to individual artists and the types of projects that they do versus funding for nonprofit art and heritage type projects, because it looks a little different. Because when you fund a nonprofit, almost all these nonprofits that are dealing with either art or heritage or cultural activities, a lot to pull off any project is going to be in staff time. And that's how nonprofits meet their budget on an annual basis, is they find grants that will fund the staff time and maybe some sundry materials that are necessary for that project. And then they get funding for it and they report on that. And that would be my expectation. So I think really it's whatever the intent for the mission of the Arts Commission with the money that they have and how it's supposed to be spent as dictated by the city needs to be maybe more clearly represented in our application process. And kind of my final point, I think the capital expenditures is a little bit vague still. Capital is used in a lot of different ways, and my understanding of how it was used in the prior year was more towards buying equipment that could be used in future projects past the current project that funding was being requested for. So like a camera or a special tool or something like that that can be reused. I think that specifically the sign for Harbor Wild Watch could be argued in both ways. It is $1,000. And so if we have a dollar amount that we consider capital, then that needs to be added to the application. If another way of looking at that sign, though, it is the final product of an art process that's being shared with the community in the same way that like a painting on a really, nice piece of canvas framed. If we're willing to fund that and it has a expectation of permanence in the same way as that sign, then to me, those are analogous. I could see where it could be argued the other way, but we funded signs that were temporary for the poetry project. So to me, it's a little ambiguous and maybe requires clarification. So those are my 4 points, I think. That's it.
Excellent suggestions. Lynn, I saw you nodding quite often.
Oh, yeah.
Any comments from you?
Yeah. Part of this, I think, is because I don't like I don't want to keep squeezing this box, redefining and so that we're trying to specifically define the boundaries of these projects. I like that we get things that we need to discuss and figure out and sort through. But I'm sure there's ways to clarify some of these details that would be helpful. But we need to discuss how, I mean, I'm all for funding the nonprofits, and if it's staff time, I thought that was a really interesting discussion, funding that. But what if we have an artist come to us and say, well, I want to create something, and it's an event, and then they say, oh, and my fee for my time is, $100 an hour. So I feel like we're funding events, and if we need to fund for paint supplies for that event, that's one thing. But for someone to come to us and say, well, I want to create an art class and invite the public, and I'm going to need supplies for that, that's different from saying, oh, and I as the teacher get paid $100 an hour, and lumping that into it. So, that's just something I feel like if we're going to be, I'm thinking out loud here, if we're going to be paying the salary of a staff member at a nonprofit, then should we be open to paying an artist like for their time in managing or in organizing and managing whatever project they're putting together?
I think though that we did. So for the Spectrum Choir, we were paying for staff to help run the camp. That was part of their budget, right?
We were paying them to hire staff for the event. That's my understanding.
Right.
Yeah. So to hire, people for that event. Yeah.
Right. We also, for hands-on art, we paid for videographers, which we never did clarify. The question was never asked, and it wasn't in the budget. Who was doing that video work? It could be somebody that works at hands-on art. It could be an external contractor. And to me, it doesn't really matter. Whatever the most efficient way that they can create that product is what matters. And I personally would rather employ that person that is already working at hands-on art, and help have them meet their mission and pay for that little bit of that project. So I think we're kind of already, I think that on a lot of these organizations, there is staff time built in. It's just some of the budgets are fairly vague, and we haven't required more out of that, which again is fine. I'm not saying that we should require a more detailed budget, but I do think it has to be consistent. So it could really go either direction as long as we're consistent. And I agree, I don't mind paying, like if an artist has some time in the project, because of course it's art and they're going to have time in the project. So if that's part of what our goal is, that's fine. We just need to be consistent and clear.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference between the nonprofit situation and, let's say, the other applicants who have come to us that have said, I just have this cool project. Where this all comes out in the end is in the submitting of receipts and things, right? So I think that's part of it, legitimizing, like everything has to be shown in a receipt, right? So, and nonprofits can do that, but then if we have artists, like if I wanted to have an art class in the community and I wanted to pay myself for my time, I mean, I don't know how that ends up in the end. Like everything has to be shown in invoicing, right? Invoices have to be submitted. So maybe that's where we can start defining more clearly, what we will agree to fund and what we won't agree to fund. There was a band that wanted to get paid. Okay, last year there was a band that said we want to have an event and we want to pay all the band members, right? And we're like, that's right. How does that work? I mean, if we're saying, okay, yes, we'll do that, but you have to be able to legitimately submit receipts from your company or, how do we do that? We can't agree to pay the band and then at the end of the day when they're trying to get their payment have Josh say, oh, we can't pay you because this isn't a legitimate business invoice. Or
Yeah, and I thought that particular one wasn't so much about the paying of the band, although I think their rates might have been high, if I remember correctly, like maybe for their age and experience. But I thought it was more because they were proposing to play out on Fox Island, and that's probably maybe the fifth point one I didn't make, was defining really more specifically what our geographical service area is.
Yeah.
And is it the person lives in that geographical service area, or that the end product is made available in that geographical service area, or maybe both?
Yeah.
I have a question. So,
Yes, Linda.
wasn't isn't there specific guidance? Hang on here, this is awful. Isn't there specific guidance about what is covered in a salary or whatever we're talking about? I mean, that should be a specific cost. So it should be covered somewhere, like in city guidance or in guidance somewhere. I mean, it should be covered somewhere. I mean, it's specific stuff, right?
Josh, can you weigh in on that?
We're just writing them a check, so whatever it's for, it's fine. It's really
All
up to
right.
you to decide what you
I
want it to
see.
be for.
Okay.
Yeah. We do, I mean, other than a lot of these grants, we get the artist will create, like, we pay for the artists themselves for their time, so they will just create their own invoice and say, I spent 30 hours working on this at X dollars an hour, and that's what we pay. That's not a problem for us.
Okay.
I guess that's kind of how we do it for Harbor Art, right? We have a budget and people bid what they can do within that budget, and then they invoice their time.
We do that. Yeah, we do that for artwork that we commission. We're paying the artist for their time and supplies and everything that they have listed in their proposal. So are those guidelines something that we can apply also to our grants? The guidelines that we use when we commission an art piece, whether it's the Arbor art or something like a sculpture for down by the Tides Tavern. And it's important that we keep the purpose of the grants in mind. And Jennifer, you kind of sort of touched on that. I mean, the purpose of these grants is to provide creative experiences for our community, whether it's poetry or music, but to give our community some kind of an artistic, creative, cultural experience. So how do we do that? We're still kind of new at this. This is only our third or fourth year.
Yeah.
And each year we've uncovered issues that we didn't quite have completely thought out before. So.
Oh, absolutely. And I think Lynn's point's valid. I mean, so if a nonprofit applies for staff time funding for a specific project, those rates, the hourly wage or whatever provided to that staff member or contract person, that's a definable, like, I mean, we have tax reports to show how much that person gets paid. So if we doubled their rate for that application, that would certainly come out in an audit pretty quickly, right? With any questioning. Whereas with an artist, it's a little more fluid. And I mean, maybe a working artist might have evidence of their previous rates, but I mean, I think it depends on the project for them more than past history. And we're not going to dive into, what their rates were over time. I mean, that's not fair or appropriate. And so maybe for individual artists, we have a different metric to apply. Maybe, I don't know if the state, they have, it's more for the trades, but they have basically wage bands for the trades, right? That have to be paid if you're contracting to somebody with state money. So I don't know if they probably don't have that for like artists or musicians per se, but there might be something along those lines that could provide guidance where we could say it's a not to exceed level or something. And we
Right.
still can obviously have fluidity in making determinations of how much we allocate to each project. We might not fully fund each project.
Right, yeah,
The hourly rate for the artists, if an artist is going to ask for their time to be reimbursed, is going to be in their proposal. So when they submit their proposal to the Arts Commission, they're going to say, I'm anticipating 30 hours on this project at $50 an hour. And whatever they put as their rate in their proposal is what we work with. So that's a judgment call for the commissioners to make, if that seems like a reasonable rate or not, or if they want to fund the whole amount or not. But yeah, like Jennifer's saying, you're not going to find like a table of listing out how much these people should be charging.
No, that's not.
well, and artists don't necessarily provide an hourly rate. They might call it creative services or creative development or something like that. I mean, anything that they don't spend on supplies and overhead is their salary. And that can, I mean, you sort of know I think that they probably figure, okay, this project is going to take me 125 hours from conceptual design idea to final installation. And how much is that worth? Maybe I make $65 an hour, maybe I make $100 an hour, but the artist is going to look at their budget. I mean, that's why we always put a budget when we do a call for art, so that then it's up to the artist to figure out how are they going to spend that $25,000 that we've given them to do this piece. And we don't ask for we ask for an accounting of materials and, probably how much insurance cost and incidentals like that. But we never ask an artist, what's your hourly rate?
Well, you're talking about a call for artists, right? You're talking about
Right.
when we have so maybe we need to distinguish the difference. That's different from someone coming to us with a project that
Yeah.
they want funded that benefits, like an event, benefits the
Right.
community. Like, have we, and I'm not recalling any time in our grant history that we have given money to a project that pays the person who is presenting it. Like so Patsy O'Connell, she's getting money, and I don't think she's receiving payment. I think she has an assistant on the budget,
Mhm.
but she's not. I don't think we've paid the Gnomes Away from Home. That was Justin. I don't think he made any money. So we're not.
I thought he charged and I'm not looking at his application, but I thought he charged for the time for the website development or some of the marketing type stuff. And I don't know if his time was included in part of
Yeah, I
that.
don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, it's hard without having those in front of us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know that for the poetry walk, the poets weren't paid. The cost went entirely to produce those signs. In hands-on art, the money is not going for the presenter's salary. It's going to pay for her supplies and the videography, the instruction video.
But we don't know who creates that. I mean, that could be hands-on art.
Right, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be a contractor. It's just usually more expensive when it's a contractor.
Yeah.
My understanding is that she told us, I'm sort of recalling that she said they have a videographer that they work with. And, but I don't know who writes the script and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I don't know how much we need to get into the weeds with people, but like dissecting all of their information. Yeah. Um, it's interesting, but I don't know how much of that is our business either, you know.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you from other, I mean, I've written a lot of grants and received a lot of grants, and generally it's, you apply for funding for either, depending on the parameters of the grant, but for the materials and maybe, and it's usually there's time, people's time, whether it's a staff person at a nonprofit or an individual artist, and you try to compensate for some of that to make the project happen. And, things we're funding are kind of time intensive things. So if our goal is to bring this end product to the community, then I think compensating people for their time or being open to it is beneficial. The part that it was new to me was like really what it sounds like to me, just as kind of an outside person now looking in, is that if you contract with somebody or bring somebody in for temporary, then that's okay, we can pay that. But if it's somebody who happens to work at the organization, we can't. Well, that's a little bit of an affront really to the people who are there day in and day out, trying to, not just for this one project, but in their job as a whole, bring these artistic or cultural elements to our community. And they're looking for a sliver of funding to help do that for a specific project. Whereas we could spend more and bring somebody else in to do it on this temporary basis. That's the part that to me is not consistent. It's not, I think we've demonstrated that we will pay for people's time in certain situations. It's just, it's more transient, I guess. And that's the part that is new to me. I haven't experienced that before.
I think it's a great conversation. I totally appreciate that this came up before in the discussions, because I think in my head I'm trying to think, well, what we're talking about here is the difference between nonprofits and for-profit as well. Like if someone from Microsoft came to us and said, we want to do a project for Gig Harbor, and it's an art project, and it's wonderful, and it's whatever. And we've allocated some staff time to that, and this is what that costs. Well, these are full-time Microsoft employees, right? That is a for-profit, so they have the income that they're already allocating to those employees. Nonprofit, always on a shoestring, not an unlimited budget, unlimited funding. And I see where our grant funds are supplementing, are allowing you to allocate funds to this particular project that doesn't take away from the funds you would have put into another project. So being a nonprofit makes a big difference in my mind about all this.
Isn't the only difference between profit and nonprofit just the profit?
No.
There's hourly rate, there's overhead, and there's profit.
And there's income.
Nonprofit doesn't have profit, and that's the small part of the hourly wage. Whereas the person doing it for profit, that small part isn't that big. Isn't it more that you want them to account for their hours? So when they give a proposal, they should tell you approximately how many hours you're going to have and what their hourly rate is, rather than just a lump sum. That way you can make the two proposals relative to each other.
That is how, on any grant that I've ever been a part of where staff time is part of it, to make a project happen, we track on our timesheets every hour what we're doing and what function we're working in, because it's very important for nonprofits to determine how much time is spent in fundraising, in general administration, or in program services to meet their mission. So yes, that time is tracked very specifically for any project, for any grant. And there is a big difference between for-profit and nonprofit. Nonprofits are held in the public trust because they don't pay federal taxes. They're exempt as a 501c3. And so there's a lot of differences in how they account for and manage their money. And you're right, it's not that you can never have net income at the end of the year that you invest back in, but there's no shareholders. There's no disbursements to partners or anything like that. Our shareholders are our members, but there's no financial benefit. You know, they're not going to get a disbursement back from the nonprofit like a stockholder would. But because they're in the public trust and the mission is to do something public serving, if that public serving mission meets the requirements for this grant, specifically cultural or artistic within a defined community, then to me, that time, it's not analogous to a Microsoft employee, because Microsoft, they have a set revenue stream, whereas a nonprofit, their revenue stream is defined by the grants they get to support the projects they provide.
Exactly. So yes, and that's why I'm 100% okay with agreeing that applicants whose proposal includes, you know, fees for nonprofit employees is acceptable. I wish Robin was here. I know she had different thoughts on it, but I know in the beginning it seemed a little more clear in my mind in the other direction. But I get it. I think I think having these grants available provides an opportunity to nonprofits that they otherwise couldn't afford, you know, so that's part of funding it. So yes, you can afford this time for this particular project. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I'm on board. I'm on board.
Yeah.
And I totally suspect there's some gray area that's going to come out in this, and it's just things that we do work through. And part of this, like Josh mentioned, is judgment, is sort of balancing. What do you think of this and that? And it's not just, usually we're not just looking at one project in a you know, under the microscope. It's how does this project compare to all the others we could fund, and we have to disperse these funds responsibly. And if anybody from the public came and asked us, like, why are you paying someone's salary? We have to be able to defend that.
I have a question too, you know, about
Yeah,
all
Linda,
of
go
this.
ahead.
So if we are a grant, we're awarding a grant, wouldn't you think that we'd have to go by the same laws as, like Stephanie's saying there? Or I always get the names wrong, but wouldn't you say that we're under the same restrictions as they are, where we should have to account for every line item on our receipts and all that? I mean, why wouldn't we? This is a grant. Why wouldn't this be the same thing?
Josh, do you have an answer, Josh? She's talking about receipts now.
We have receipts for everything. So if someone wants to spend, I mean, any nonprofit can document the time that their staff spends on something and send us a receipt for it, and we'll pay it. It's not that hard.
I don't think that should be our job, right? We don't want to get into that, like questioning every little penny here and there. But there is accountability, Linda. Like it's there, you know, it is there if somebody does want to question it.
And I think maybe, Linda, to answer your question, the city as a government entity has its own accounting regulations that has to abide by.
I see. Okay.
And our grantees comply with that by submitting their reimbursement requests to whatever level of detail is required by the city, with receipts and documenting each line item on their budget. Does that answer what you were asking?
Yeah, I see. And you know, it just seems to me that this shouldn't be so hard. There should be some guidance that we should be able to rely on for this stuff. And it just seems to be really undefined. And that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's why we're trying to define it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're still trying to get this right. Yeah.
It's really interesting. Yeah.
No kidding. And I wish Robin was here too. And I think we would benefit from her insight. Maybe she would provide us with, I know that the State Arts Commission makes lots of grants. And maybe she could give us a sample of the grant forms, the grant application forms that the state uses. So I think rather than, I'm with Lynn. My perception of what we should be doing has changed as a result of today's discussion. And but I just really feel like we could benefit from Robin's insights as well. If no one minds, I would prefer that rather than making any kind of decision today, we can maybe continue this discussion to next month so that Robin can weigh in on it also.
Yeah. Well, we do
I think
have a
that's-
precedent. I mean, we've set a precedent. We are
Right.
funding the museum staff time. Like we did decide to do that. So there is a precedent. And it came out of discussion. And so I think we are generally in agreement that we will fund for volunteer time, and it'll be less of a discussion in the future, right? So I feel like the decision's been made. We don't need to vote on it or anything because we already have chosen to do that this year in the
Right.
grants, and it's worth discussing. And I'm sure it'll come up next year when we're reviewing certain little details in someone's budget, and it's very interesting. But yeah, I feel like we have agreed on it as a committee, as a commission.
We do have a quorum here, so I agree. We all seem to agree on that.
I don't know if it needs to be specified
No.
in the application.
Your application form says that you'll fund direct costs related to any endeavor. So, I mean, these are pretty clearly direct costs. This is just
Yeah.
the application is saying that you may fund direct costs. So it's all of these direct costs, whether it's supplies or time or, facility rentals, it's all subject to your discretion as a commission. So
Yeah.
you're really not making any changes here. It's discussion for you to think about how you as a commission view that. I don't see any changes that are needed to the form based on this or anything like that.
Yeah.
I think the one change that might need to happen to the form though is just defining the area, the geographical area more
geographical area.
specifically.
That's
And really, I
true.
think this discussion is important and Robin should be included on it, or she could at least watch the playback of this because what we don't want is next year to get back into a situation where we're all saying, well, this is my opinion. And this is not really an opinion thing. It's more concrete than that. And I also wanted to apologize. I hope nobody thought I hung up on you guys at the last meeting. We lost at the most inopportune time the internet down here at the museum. I didn't just hang up on you
Oh
guys.
no! I thought you had to leave anyway.
No, I know I had to leave, but I wouldn't have left so abruptly. Our internet went down and.
Oh no!
Well, I'll quit sucking my thumb that you just
Yeah.
blew us off.
Didn't take it personally.
I didn't figure you did. Finally, she's back.
The application for the Creative Endeavors Grant has one page that outlines the funding guidelines. And it sounds like, Jennifer, maybe you want to make some changes to that page. So maybe that would be a good homework assignment to assign and come back at the next meeting with something something concrete that the committee can look at and move forward with.
I think that's a great idea since you have a lot of experience with this. If you go through the application and the guidelines and have some suggestions, then we discuss and vote on those kinds of changes. That would be great. Yeah.
I'd be happy to.
That's great. Good idea, Josh. Thank you for that good guidance. Excellent. So, and it probably wouldn't hurt if we all look over those guidelines again. My only concern is if we wait until December or January to have these discussions, we're going to be forgetting about the things that we had problems with this year. And I think it's to our benefit if we work out the little challenges while they're fresh in our mind. All right, Lynn?
Well, while we're talking about the grants, you know what? I would love to hear like from previous grant recipients about the events. We don't get that. We don't get that closure. We don't get that, you know, they submit everything to the city, they're done, they get their money, and then we don't often hear how it went, what was good, what was bad, what would you recommend? And I know Justin, who did the Gnomes Away from Home, wanted to make a presentation, and I said, well, get in touch with Josh and see, get on the agenda, or how does, I don't know if they have to get on the agenda, do they just need to show up and be a guest and make a short presentation, or how could we do that where we actually come back around to those recipients, because most of them I have no idea. Like, I'd love to see a few pictures and just get a brief report, reaction, informal kind of understanding of how it all went for our recipients.
Maybe we can like dedicate I don't know, our December meeting or something like that too. A little kind of like show and tell from our grant recipients of how, and I just said December because by that time we're sort of starting to think about what we're going to do next year.
Right. And that by December they're usually all complete.
They're finished, yeah.
We could do that, or like we might run into the same problem we have with a backlog of people waiting. I don't know. How does that work? We don't have to make it mandatory, but
No.
does the grant recipient say, hey, when you're finished with your project, would you mind just jumping in on a meeting and letting us know how it went? Or what's the right way to do that? I don't know.
I'm going to weigh in again as a nonprofit
Okay.
person, not as a private artist, because I think the perspective would be different. For the size of these grants, that level of reporting it's a lot.
Yeah.
But I would say that the final report that we submit with our receipts and everything can have some photos and number of people that attended the event. It could have a little bit of information with it that we can share. And then we can make it optional to come to a meeting and share if people would like to.
Yeah. So we would need, and I'm talking about very informal, like
Absolutely.
give us some feedback. How did it go? Super informal. That if it's not like that, then, and Josh is getting the reports, then would it be Josh or Tiffany's responsibility to say, okay, I got a report from so and here's what they said? I mean, and it wouldn't be mandatory. I guess that's the thing. Not mandatory. We'd love for you to show up, give us a few minutes of a review. It would help us for sure.
Like an exit interview.
John,
So we get the written reports with the final invoice, and I probably should be sharing those with the commission. I don't think Molly probably did that before, and I probably dropped the ball on that this last year.
No, I don't remember ever seeing
that. Shouldn't be any problem to get to you. Having them scheduled to come to a meeting, getting the final reports and the invoices is sometimes pretty difficult. So I'm not sure adding the extra step of getting them to join the meeting might be pushing it a little bit for some of them. Some of the people that got grants last year didn't get their paperwork in until March of this year. So yeah, the timing can be pretty tricky to work out, but we can extend the invitation and see if we can get, I'm sure some of them will want to do that. Some of them may or may not, but I think there's probably a way we can work that out. The other problem is that most of them are turning them in the end of the year in December, which is right when we're ramping up the grant process. So our meetings are usually pretty full then.
Yeah.
January, February, March. So the timing may not work out. Their agreements say that they are supposed to turn in their grant requests as soon as their event is completed. And almost uniformly, none of them ever do. They wait until the end of the year. If we can get them to actually do that in August or September, then we have a little more downtime with the commission, and maybe we could have them report back. But that's an extra layer of tracking that staff would have to figure out how to work into that, which is probably something we can do, but we'll have to think about that.
What if we had one of the commissioners as the point person because once we award these grants, theoretically we don't hear anything. you know, sometime, and I would love, I mean, once in a while we get invited to the events, and then more often than not, we end up missing the events because we didn't know when they were. So if we had, and I'm not volunteering for this, but if we had, if someone on the commission was the liaison and could once in a while check in and say, how's it going? Have you done it? When is it? Would you like to come talk to us for a few minutes at our next meeting? Like, just let us know how it went. I feel like it would require one person to be that kind of liaison.
I would be happy to do that because I kind of do that very informally anyway. So I think I'm happy to do that.
That
And
would be
they
great.
often email me,
Yeah.
you know, or whoever's the chair.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to do that.
That would be great.
Can we hold back a percentage until they get the reports in?
Oh yeah.
But they don't get anything till the report is submitted.
I know.
Yeah, they don't get anything till they do a written report.
Right.
But,
That's right.
And Josh, don't we ask them to also send photos of their event with their invoices in their written report?
I don't think it's that specific. I don't remember off the top of my head what we asked for. I think we have a report form that they fill out, and I think they're encouraged to add photos to it. I remember
Okay.
correctly.
Could we add a feedback sheet to that requirement? You know, like give us some feedback on everything how it went, you know, like one more sheet or something to answer some questions.
I think that is.
Already a given?
We have a comments section on their form for them to comment on the process.
So we kind of have already covered that.
I think that's what the intent is.
Yeah. Okay.
And the
Well,
comment forms, a series of questions on how the event went. So it's
Would you say that again, Dan?
Can we make the comment section structured like a series of 2 or 3 questions that illuminate how the event went? Above what the report said?
I think we could do that. Yeah. I'm happy to look at the report. I mean, I never see the report. That always just goes to Josh or Molly or whomever, or Tiffany probably coming up. So we could, I'll take a look at that, the report, and maybe Josh or Tiffany can help me with that, and we can maybe add a few questions of what would you like to have them tell us? Any suggestions, Dan?
Well, we all sit here saying we don't know what happened.
Yeah.
We never get to see any of this. The question should be to answer the questions we come up with. Not very many.
Yeah.
Tell these people they have to answer 10 questions and they'll probably not even submit a proposal.
Yeah.
If there's only 1 or 2 or 3, maybe with photographs or something, so they have structure, a comment section, oh, everything went well. Well, that doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't illuminate how the project went. Maybe 2 or 3 questions like, and I can't think of what they are right now, but given all the time, I'm sure we can come up with them. That let them think about how the project went, did it meet their goals, etc. It's not in the report. You know, that's going to be hard to try to figure out questions that we haven't, that wouldn't be specified for the report itself.
Yeah.
I think certainly having pictures, and then you could always ask how many people were served.
That sort of thing. And
Right.
That's
pretty
how were
cool.
the comments? Did the people enjoy it? Did they go out with glum faces? That sort of thing. Like if it's got kids involved, did the kids have a ball? They really enjoy it, or did they just kind of blow it off?
Okay.
The report form is actually part of the application form as well. So when Jennifer brings that back next meeting, you can look at those pages as well, because it's all part of the same document packet.
Well, so Charlie, yeah, I think, and I'd love to know, Jennifer, what you think too, since you've been involved in this process before. Like, what are your thoughts on having Charlie be the liaison? Meaning, like, there's 10 recipients, Charlie, and you're willing to occasionally check in with them and get updates and find out when their events are, and could we be invited or to some of them?
I don't mind doing that. If someone else wants to help, well, and, you know, be a sidekick, that's fine with me too. Would you, Dan? Great. Okay. Cool. I think it just gives us a chance to get to know them a little better.
Yeah.
You know, I wonder though, in lieu of having them come back and give reports, if maybe in the future, if we, I don't know, have like a picnic in the park and invite all former grant recipients as the years go on, as a way of connecting the community versus reporting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, just as a, I know that doesn't give you the same hands-on feeling about the specific event, but I feel like a lot of these, like the hands-on art, right, we're probably not going to go into the classroom because there's background checks and there's logistics with that.
Right.
You know, but probably some of these, you know, we could certainly choose to get out in the community if we wanted to, but a lot of them are school related, so it's just gonna be tough.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
But I think asking a few metric-based questions on the report and getting some photographs, or I can't remember, do we have a web, like our own little Facebook or web page, so people can post things or tag us? I don't know, all that social media stuff, I don't do it, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, that
Yeah.
kind of engagement, maybe that's optional, that might, and
Yeah.
it brings attention to their project as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes the grant recipients do that. For example, the Gig Harbor High School band boosters are really good about posting stuff on Facebook. And Hands-on Art always sends us photographs of what the arts that the kids are doing, and sometimes photos of the kids making the art projects. So those two, which are both affiliated with the school district, are really good about their own publicity and then letting us know when how things are going and when they're happening.
I will say there's a collections quarter video out with the credits having the Arts Commission on it. And it went out on our Facebook page at the beginning of the month. I'm not involved in all of that, so I don't know how they tagged and everything, but I can.
That's great.
But,
I love that. See, we wouldn't have known that if you weren't here. I love
well,
to.
you have to follow Harbor History Museum.
I know.
Facebook.
I think I am. I'm just never on Facebook. I hope if I'm not, I'm gonna click on that. But I still would be clueless. But I would love to know things like that. Like like the poetry. I missed some of the poetry last year. I don't know how I missed it. I didn't know about it. You know. I saw it the year before because I think they invited us directly, but I missed the poetry. I'd love to know when that's happening, and the school band and the choral academy. Any of those things that are open more publicly that we could go to, I'd love to know about.
Right. And I think that it's going to be up to us to Dan and me to kind of keep reaching out to them and reminding them to tell us when you're going to do your event, because we would love to be there. And I remember one year the band was it the band or the Choral Academy that did a concert, and they did a thank you at the end where everyone up there on stage, all the kids said, "Thank you, Gig Harbor Arts Commission."
Yeah, that was the Choral Academy with the kids. It was great. Yeah. So good.
Dan, you and I just need to kind of keep nudging them. Great.
Don't bother them. Just check in.
Yeah, right. Anything else on grants? In which case, we will move on to our first discussion item. which is Harvestings and Roundabout Public Art. And I was kind of hoping that Jeff would be here today with us because they do have a tentative completion date
Mm.
of the middle of July, I think. It might be August, but they're planning to have the whole thing completed, the street totally reopened and everything this summer. And because we are still, I think, wanting to put art somewhere in that sidewalk, and we have a designated place, I just want us to be sure that we are putting out our call for art in a timely fashion that will give the artist enough time to get it done and all that kind of thing. So I will send Josh. Josh, do you have the draft of the art call for art that we did several months ago? I know I
don't
have that.
have
I can
one.
send it to
Yeah.
you.
Jeff or either Jeff or Aaron Holst, our senior engineer for that project, will be at your May meeting to discuss that with you.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, we need that because we have to get this launched right away.
Right.
I think that's going to be a tricky
Oh.
call for art. But,
Yeah, that's why we need time to think about it. I will send everybody what we have so far, which is all written in pencil, but it just gives us some talking points. I'll send that to everyone right after this meeting. And then let's plan on having a serious discussion about that at our May meeting. And probably
Just to
wouldn't hurt to have Jeff maybe take a look at the call before we send it out, just to make sure that we're we're not making things more difficult for his department.
Just to
Jennifer, did
clarify
you?
that, yeah, the artwork doesn't have to be completed by mid-July. It'll be installed after they're done with the work, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't want us to be getting into or making an artist, putting them in a position of having to install art in the sidewalk in the middle of a November storm or something.
Oh, no, totally. More time is better.
Yeah.
Storm in November?
Or April.
It'll probably be sunny in November,
That's probably true.
snowing in
Yeah.
April.
No kidding. Any more discussion on that one? Okay, number 2 discussion item, Arbor art update. Lynn, anything on that?
Yes, I'd like to make some progress today on this. Hey, Josh, did you get the file I sent you with?
Yeah.
I've scouted out. I've scouted out Shaw Park, and I took some pictures of trees that have there are some trees in Shaw Park that have tags on them, but of course I have no idea what that means. So I've got, I think there's a couple options I'm presenting today for sites, and they are all in Grandview Forest, once again. Okay. Hang on a second. Okay. So, yeah, Grandview just has all the snags. So this first one is, not long ago, the city took down this tree right there that you can see in that first picture. And I was unaware. And instead of leaving a taller snag, they left a stump. Okay, this is about, I don't know, it's like a few feet tall. And I was really bummed about that because I thought, oh, that would have made a really good site for Arbor art, because it's in the second picture you can see it's right off the path there.
Wow, yeah.
And I was really bummed about that, and I thought, well, that was a wasted opportunity. Except On another side of the park, there's another stump that you see there in letter B. That's in a different location.
Oh,
But
look at those.
site number 2 is right in the background. You see site number 2 with the where I have that arrow pointing to those. That's where we did the 5 snags in the background. So the stump B is close to where those snags are. And I thought we could lump these 2 stumps into the next version of Arbor art by, having an artist carve both of them. Like they're relatively small. So it could be little gnomes or little woodland creatures or something like that. So that is a proposal for 2 stumps. Okay. This is, sorry, I included a little map up there that generally shows you where these locations are. This is an interesting location here. This snag is not far, if you can see on the map. It's not very far down the path from sites 1 and 3. But it is in a nice location because it's right off the path there, and there's 2 paths that go around it, and on the other side of that is Grandview Street, and there's another entrance to the park right behind. So people would walk right by this snag from a couple different directions. So it's in a nice prominent location. It's really tall and it's kind of narrow. Honestly, a snag like this is so tall, I would almost expect an artist, considering the kind of art that's we've been having done, I would almost want to cut the top 6 feet of it off so that they have a shorter snag to work with. In other words, depending on what the proposal is, it would lend itself to a nicer carving, I think, if it was a little shorter, I guess. But you gotta leave that open to the artist. But it's really tall. It's really tall. It's really narrow at the top. So, I wouldn't necessarily want George Kenny to go up there and carve a little house on the top and then call it done. So, anyway, I'm talking too much. That's another option. And then there's one more page, Josh. Yeah. I just tossed these in. These are the horizontal. I mean, it came out. The last one came out beautifully in a horizontal format. And here's a few healthy looking logs that look like they could be carved. The letter D is very close to site number 1 and 3. You can see where I tried to delineate that on that map. So it's close to the others. And it also, when people are coming up one trail to the left that you don't see, that top log would be greeting them. Anyway, these are nicely located horizontal logs that could be a good option for horizontal carvings. Not together, but like one of these locations, I would say, would be an appropriate site. I don't have any I didn't come here with like a recommendation necessarily, just wanted to open up for discussion. I might be leaning toward the 2 stumps, because those are going to be breaking down more and more over time. And if we were going to do 2, they're in 2 separate locations. They could be 2 little animals or 2 little gnomes or whatever. Probably now would be the time to do those. So what do you guys think? Just want to kind of know what you think.
Then I have a question on these horizontal stumps. Is it even feasible to consider moving one of them to one of the other parks? So the carving could be like that shortest of the horizontal in picture E, like would it be feasible or cost both logistically and by cost to move it to another park, and then the carving
Mhm.
is in a different park, so they're not all concentrated in the one
Yeah.
park.
And that is possible. It's not something we've considered. Um, Then we'd have to choose a location in another park. We'd have to choose a park, choose a location for that.
But I
Not
think
for the
if,
parks. Mhm.
hey, hang on, like if we just put all of these sites out for bid and leave it up to the artist to make his decision on what he wants to carve, right?
Mhm.
If he wants to move it, that would be his option. Just put all of this stuff out there, and let him choose which ones he wants and
Yeah.
how he wants them.
And that is something that came up in the very beginning of our Arbor Art project when we started it, but we were told by the city clerk at the time that we needed to choose a specific site. Like
I see.
the
Okay.
project is an application, is a call for art for a specific site. And I'm with you, Linda. I was kind of hoping to go, hey, let's just leave it open and see what people can recommend. But yeah, I mean, Josh, you could confirm that, but that we were told it has to be site specific. Which
Yeah,
would
I mean,
mean, yeah, sorry.
to put out a call for somebody to place a bid. Yeah, it probably really should be everyone bidding on the same project, not saying here's a bunch of different projects and we'll take a bunch of different bids. Just for the review process, I think to keep it equitable, you need to have everyone bidding on the same thing.
Yeah. So then, in other words, if we were to do what you're saying, Jennifer, we would have to decide to take that log right there and have the city relocate it to a location that we choose in another park.
Yeah, and that might be prohibitive. I don't know. I was just thinking
Well,
like Sandview Park, for instance. It's kind of a newish park, and
yeah.
I know that horizontal one with the bears it was really well done, and I mean, they're all beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
If we just are trying to highlight more parks to people, or
Mm-hmm.
spreading it out. And I know there's not enough trees that meet the criteria in the other parks.
There's really not even any really that I've seen. So
I'm tickled that, Lynn, that you found so many options still in Grandview Forest.
Mhm.
And although I love the idea of spreading this around through as many parks as we have, like you said, this is where the canvases are. And I think it's kind of cool that Grandview Forest has sort of become this little hidden art treasure
yeah.
hike, and can you see how many critters you can find that are carved in trees and logs and so forth in this particular site. So we are going to have a lot of choices, I think, at the sports complex when that happens. And it's probably going to be it might be important for us to be able to say that there may be a lot of outcry when they start cutting the trees in for the sports complex.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, that's something that's on the city council's radar right now as we speak. But I love that there are all these options that we didn't know about before, right in Grandview Forest Park. So let's see what we got here.
Yeah.
I love the stumps. And I think that's a more maybe of a little bit of a challenge of a canvas for an artist. And I'm inspired still by what Jeff Samdusky did. Did I say his name right? Samdusky? Samodowski.
Close, yeah.
What he did with that little log was so wonderful. So, I mean, it's totally transformed the possibility for logs and stumps in my mind.
Yeah. The nice thing about that too is that the city came around later and elevated that log to keep it from decaying, more, to slow down the decaying process, which is cool, which is something we can do with these horizontal logs that we can't do with the stumps.
Yeah.
And that's why I guess I'm leaning a little more. I'm completely open to what you guys want to do. I'm probably personally leaning a little more toward combining those two stumps into one project, this year, because they are rooted to the ground, and they don't have as much of a lifespan as some of these horizontal logs would. They're also small, they're small. I don't know. Well, that shouldn't be. I don't think that's a big factor, but it's not a very large canvas for the artist to work with. But I think it lends itself to something. I would, love to see a couple gnomes or little animals or whatever it is that would be right there on the ground. I'd love to see what they can come up with. But
And the stumps are they're kid level,
yeah.
which I think is just kind of special, for a little 4-year-old kid to say, Mom, look at this. Look what's in this little stump here.
Mm-hmm. And they're close to the paths too, which is nice. They'll be noticed. They're not going to be hidden. So
Yeah.
Hey Josh, will you go back to page 1 then, and so we can look closer at those stumps? I also marked on the map where they are. So one of them there on the bottom you can see is just past the site number 2 location, but the other one is in a different part of the park. If you look in the first picture where A stump is, through the trees, all the way through the trees back to where you can see toward water, that's site number 2.
Okay.
You can barely see them through the trees there, but so it's on a totally different path from the other locations.
Okay. Lynn, there looks to be a small log in the foreground of number A.
Yeah.
Is that a possibility as well?
You know what? I think that it would be, it's at that site. If the artist sees an opportunity to either incorporate that or use that, and now I don't remember. I think that's a small log. I think that's a small stump size.
It looks pretty small, but.
Yeah. I think that that's open to the artist, to say, hey, I could also carve this into something that works with the other stump, or that would be wonderful, actually. But it depends on the vision of the artist.
Sure. Sure. But we wouldn't rule it out if they did have that inspiration.
Oh, I wouldn't rule it out. No. In fact, I think it'd be great if, some artists had used elements of twigs and things, anything they can find in the environment that's natural to bring toward the art. I'm all for that. So, we should remind ourselves, it doesn't have to be a carving of that stump. It could be just some kind of artistic embellishment. So someone could say, I want to take that other log and put it on top of this stump and put twigs in there and make a big Sasquatch creature out of it. It could be any of that. So yes, we're not limited to carvings here.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So yeah, I think they should be encouraged to use parts of the environment around it as well, if that's the kind of artist they are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So are there any other commissioner comments on anyone have a preference for any of these sites to give Lynn some direction? I love the stumps for now. And I'm thrilled that there are yet two other options after the stumps.
Yeah, yeah.
I think any of them are great, so the stumps are good. Is there a way to, I don't know what avenues, and I don't have any good suggestions, but to broaden our advertising so it reaches more than the carvers to submit bids? Like other listservs that we might be able to use, or you probably already have, but.
We did use, we put out the call to Peninsula Art League and didn't get any responses there. We can certainly extend it to the Tacoma listserv, the arts listserv. And I think, well, if anyone has mailing lists or connections with artists who might be appropriate for these, feel free to send it out. I mean, it's any ways that we have individually to spread the word on these, we should be going for it.
Mm-hmm.
I know that Laura does a good job, Laura Pettit, of putting it on the city's website and the city's Facebook page and those kinds of things.
But are we only looking for a carver?
No.
What
No.
if somebody wanted to build a house in it or something? I don't
Well-
know, like like a carpenter, like
Mm-hmm.
we're open to that too, right? What is the, I don't call for art say? It doesn't say just specifically sculpture, right?
No, it says
Artistic embellishment.
artistic embellishment.
And we include on the last page several samples that I selected. And if you guys have any other interesting examples, the application includes a page, 1 or 2 pages of examples that are not just carving. Some of them have bird houses attached to them and other kinds of almost painted styles, or like I said, using other parts of nature to create to build a sculpture on around it. I would love it if one day we get artists that aren't just carvers, but also have some other crazy ideas we can't even imagine.
Yep. Right.
All
Well,
Snag could have been into something like a totem pole.
Yeah. 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 No one's proposed that. We just, yeah. In spite of how far the reach of our application might be, the type of artists who work in this kind of medium, there haven't been many of them come forward. So it would be great to get the word out more and get some more variety.
right. Is there, I wonder, is there like a chainsaw artists association?
Yeah.
Seems like there is. There are competitions all over the country.
I contacted and I never got a response, but I sent the application and
Okay.
all that to I don't have it in front of me.
Well, you've already thought of that though.
Well, I only came across one, but it's like the Northwest Carvers Association, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know where I put that, but I never did hear anything, and I'll try it again. Pacific Northwest Carvers, something or other. I'll find that, but yeah, I didn't even get an acknowledgement of that. So I don't know if they received it.
Well, we'll keep trying. So for Lynn's sake, let's give her let's make a decision on what we want to pursue for this year. Some are kind of leaning toward those 2 stumps. Do other commissioners have a different preference? Dan, Linda? Well, let's go with the stumps.
Okay, great. Okay, 2
And
stumps.
And if it turns out like, I remember for the last one, Jeff, we did have a different tree assigned, and then Jeff said, can't do that. That tree is just too rotten. It won't hold up with the carving. And it was Jeff's idea to go with that log. So I think we also need to be willing to change our palettes if somebody comes and says, yeah, those stumps are cool, but they're just all rotten.
Yeah. Both
At
of
least
those
we
stumps
have
are, yeah, I not, they look healthy to me. I sort of went up and knocked on them. They look real solid, but I don't know. But yeah, definitely, I thought it was great that Jeff was able to provide us with an alternative.
Right, yeah. Okay, so.
I have another question though, going
Yeah.
back to Lynn's original thing. You said that you only discovered these stumps, accidentally. Didn't we have an agreement or whatever for the Parks Department to let us know whenever they're chopping down a tree? Did we lose that somehow?
I think it slips through the cracks. Yes. People forget, and we need to just keep reminding them. Hey, but Josh, who is it that is it the Parks Department that cuts down the trees, or is it Public Works, or who's in charge of cutting the trees down?
It's the Public Works operations. Yeah, they kind of do everything. They do parks and streets. They wear many hats.
Yeah, so how would we keep reminding those key people that we have this tree project, this Arbor Art project that desperately needs to know if they're taking out a tree that could be useful for this project? We've mentioned it to them before. Jeff Langhelm knows, but of course it's not like the most important thing on his mind. And I totally get how it slipped through the cracks, but my heart just sunk when I walked into the park and that tree had been taken down to like 3 feet. Typically, I thought their standard practice was to leave a snag, so I was really surprised that it was just cut all the way down. Yeah, that's like I mentioned it over and over to the Parks Commission, but they're not in charge of that. So the Public Works they just need to have that in the back of their mind. And we've reiterated it about the sports complex. Keep that in mind. But I think it's very likely that they'll forget those things when the time comes. So they just need to be reminded enough that, and then there might be turnover of people who don't know. So there's probably a few people in the Public Works Department that need to be reminded to be on the lookout for us.
Yeah, it's Jeff and Ken that'll be the ones doing that, and they've both been working with this program for several years. So they know, but yeah, they could.
Yeah.
We'll just remind them.
Jeff and Ken.
Yeah, we'll just keep reminding them.
Yeah.
Don't forget, guys.
Yeah. Whenever they have a tree project, they need to go Arbor Art. Oh yeah. We better check with the Arts Commission.
Really, yes.
Or honestly, it wouldn't have even been a big deal if they had just left a normal snag. I don't know why they would have taken it down to that stump, So many other trees there are left, 10 feet or higher. But then again, I think this shorter stump creates for an interesting opportunity for an artist. I just wish they were a little bit taller.
Yeah. Well, we are developing a variety of examples here. So
yeah.
Any other discussion on Arbor Art? Okay, any commissioners' reports or comments?
This is where I think we talk usually about the Parks Commission, right?
Yes.
So, and I'm the liaison for the Parks Commission, but we have Anastasia Wright was our liaison for the Parks Commission, right? And so she's no longer with the Parks Commission, so we don't have a liaison. And the only thing I wanted to mention regarding what came up in the last Parks meeting I went to was that you know the beautiful wooden sculpture in Crescent Valley Park or Crescent Creek Park? Did you guys know that someone vandalized it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know, and I still haven't seen it, but I just wanted to mention that I've been wanting to go by there and kind of see what happened. I can't remember if they said they're I think they might have been talking to the artist, which is Jeff Samadowski, to figure out how to repair it, or I got the feeling it wasn't a massive vandalization. But do you know more about that, Josh?
I don't. I heard that it happened. I don't know
Yeah.
who did it or got
I
it cleaned
wish-
up. I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, I wish I had gone by there to see the extent of it. But so that is super. It's a shame.
Kidding.
I'll go by there sometime. I'll go by there sometime and take a picture and see what's going on. But I do think that every time I walk through Grandview Forest, I'm like, I check out the art to see if anybody's done anything stupid to it. But so far, so good.
So far, so good. There was another piece of art that was vandalized recently. The mural down by Devoted Kiss Cafe. The artist who had been commissioned to do that holiday mural, she was commissioned by the city's tourism department to do the holiday mural, and then people went and got their photos, did selfies in front of that holiday mural. And the artist volunteered to do a mural supporting the Ukrainian people. And she did a beautiful art, paid for her own paints, did it on her own time, of a beautiful sunflower and support Ukraine, something like that. That very night, the night that she finished it, somebody came along and threw red and white and blue paint on the mural. And it was a real heartbreaker. But the artist went back the very next day and redid it.
My God.
She incorporated the defacement into a new art piece, and it's gotten a lot of publicity. Rotary took up a collection to reimburse her for the paint, and I think there's a little reward pool that's been people are donating to a reward if they can catch the people. And one of the interesting things is whoever did it left footprints on the sidewalk right in front. They stepped in the paint and left their footprints.
Oh, great.
And I actually took photos of the footprints and included them in my newspaper story.
Oh.
And there are several video cameras at businesses around there, and they've got excuse me, they've got photos of it actually happening. But the guy was wearing a hoodie, and so they've got some leads, but nothing has been.
Yeah.
They haven't tracked anybody down yet, but so there is mischief afoot in our community of people that, like you said, just jerks.
Yeah.
That feel
Maybe Russian.
an obligation to.
What'd you say, Dan?
That he may be Russian.
Maybe.
That's why
Yeah.
he's a Russian girl.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah. So
Uh,
anyway, but that one is the artist did a wonderful job of using the defacement to make a new statement. So, and it's just really lovely. So if you go down Harborview by the Devoted Kiss and what is that? The big one, Anthony's, that area there. It's right across from the Finholm Market.
mhm.
Yeah, just drive slow and you'll see that beautiful mural that she's done.
Hmm.
And people are also bringing bouquets of sunflowers and setting them around on the sidewalk in front of the mural.
Nice.
So there's a lot more support than there are detractors.
Yeah. Hmm. Wow.
It is a beautiful mural. I heard the story on NPR.
Oh,
No
you're
kidding.
kidding.
Yeah, they
Huh.
picked it up and had an interview with the artist.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah, she has a heart this big, you know.
Who is the artist? Do you know her name?
I do know her name. Oh gosh. Give me a couple minutes and I'll dig out my story and I can tell you.
Mm-hmm.
But she has her studio right there, real close to the to where the art is.
Oh,
So hold on just a second. Ukrainian mural vandalized. Her name is Isaacson, is her last. Hilaire Isaacson.
Hilaire. Oh.
Hillarie. Oh, Hillary Isaacson. Isackson.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, and it was just heartbreaking that
Mm.
somebody had to make a bigger point with a louder voice.
That's so amazing that she just got back out there.
Got out there, and she was up on a ladder painting when I
Yeah.
got her on the phone to interview her.
Yeah.
So,
Good for her.
any other commissioners' reports or comments? Our next regular meeting is May 11th,
May 11th.
and we will discuss more at that time. Any changes that Jennifer specifically recommends to our Creative Endeavor Grant application. And we'll also be talking about the call for artists for the Harbor View sidewalk.
Great.
Anything else for the good of the order? If not, may I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
No, second.
And Dan and Jennifer both are seconding it, and we are adjourned. I'll see you next month. Thank you, everyone.
everybody.
Right.